What if we've been looking at them all wrong? What if these stone sentinels, these incredible feats of ancient engineering, weren't objects of worship, but a desperate final warning from a society on the brink of collapse? A message carved in volcanic rock, left for a future they would never see. A story of how a paradise can be lost. This is the unsettling question at the heart of Rapa Nui. And to answer it, we need to journey back to a time when a vibrant culture, in total isolation, created wonders, and then vanished into shadow. In the heart of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from anywhere, there's a tiny speck of land defined by a giant mystery. Easter Island, known to its people as Rapa Nui, is a place of impossible achievements and a haunting silence. For centuries, its silent giants have guarded a forgotten history. These are the Moai, colossal stone figures that stare inland with hollow eyes, their backs turned to the vast, empty sea that brought their creators, and perhaps their doom. We've always been told they were monuments to gods or tributes to powerful chiefs. But what if they were something else entirely? The land of the stone giants. To understand the warning, first, you have to understand the world that created it. Rapa Nui is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. A single volcanic triangle, more than 2,000 miles from the coast of Chile, and over 1,000 from the nearest Polynesian island. It's a world unto itself. Sometime around the 12th or 13th century, intrepid Polynesian voyagers, the greatest sailors of the ancient world, guided by stars and swells, landed their canoes on its shores. They found an island paradise, a land dominated by giant palm trees and teeming with bird life. They called it Te Pito o Te Henua, the navel of the world. Here, they founded a new society, and for centuries, lived in splendid isolation, their culture evolving in ways unique to this one patch of land. And from this isolation, an obsession was born. The Rapa Nui people began to carve. Across the island, nearly 1,000 statues were carved from the island's volcanic tuff. Some stand over 30 feet tall and weigh more than 80 tons. Just think about that they were carved by hand, using only stone tools. We see them now as just heads, but that's an illusion of time. Excavations have revealed these heads are attached to full torsos, buried deep in the soil, their bodies covered in intricate carvings protected from the elements for centuries. They were carved in a single quarry from the soft rock of the Rano Raraku volcano, a true nursery of stone giants. And then somehow they were moved. They were transported for miles across the island's rolling terrain without wheels or large animals, to be erected on massive stone platforms called ahu. These platforms, often holding the bones of revered ancestors, were the sacred centers of community life. The Moai were placed upon them, almost always facing inland, watching over the villages, the people, and the land. The mystery of how they were moved has fueled speculation for generations. Theories range from legions of workers using massive log rollers to complex systems of ropes. Recent experiments have shown it might have been possible to walk the statues to their destinations, a slow, shuffling process requiring incredible coordination and skill. But as fascinating as how they were moved is, it pales in comparison to the central question of why. Why would a small, isolated society pour so much of its energy and resources into this monumental task? What was the purpose of their silent vigil? To answer that, we have to look into the beliefs of the Rapa Nui people. The traditional narrative, monuments of power and faith. For the people of Rapa Nui, the world was alive with a spiritual energy they called mana. Mana was the life force of the ancestors, a power that could influence the fortunes of the living. And the Moai, according to most archaeologists, were the main channels for this power. They weren't gods themselves, but representations of deified ancestors' powerful chiefs and revered clan leaders. By carving a Moai, a clan could capture the mana of a departed leader and anchor it to the land. The statue became a sacred vessel that would protect the clan, legitimize its authority, and ensure its prosperity. The Moai faced their villages as eternal guardians, a constant reminder of lineage, power, and the spiritual world. This belief system was woven into the island's very survival. Recent research has uncovered a fascinating link between the Moai and the island's most precious resources. One study revealed that the Rano Raraku quarry, the birthplace of the statues, was also a site of productive agriculture. The process of quarrying the soft volcanic tuff created nutrient-rich soil, perfect for growing essential crops. The Rapa Nui believed the Moai in the quarry sanctified the ground and boosted fertility. The statues weren't just symbols. They were seen as active partners in the island's food production. Another compelling theory suggests the Moai were strategically placed to watch over the island's scarce freshwater sources. On an island with little surface water, freshwater springs were vital. Statistical analysis shows a strong correlation between the locations of Aho platforms and these water sources. In this view, the Moai were guardians of water, their imposing presence marking and protecting the lifeblood of the community. So, the traditional picture isn't one of impending doom, but of faith and survival. The Moai were symbols of stability and practical markers for essential resources. They represented a society in balance with its world, confident in its ability to harness ancestral power to provide for the future. But then, something started to go wrong. Sometime after the year 1600, the carving slowed and eventually stopped. The tools were dropped. In the quarry at Rano Raraku, dozens of Moai were left unfinished, abandoned in mid-creation. One colossal figure, the largest ever attempted, lies still attached to the bedrock, a silent testament to a dream that was abruptly shattered. The era of the Moai came to an end, and a dark age began. The shadow of collapse, a paradise lost. To understand the disaster that befell the Rapa Nui, we have to look at the island the first Polynesians discovered. Pollen analysis from lakebed sediments paints a picture of a land we'd barely recognize today. It was a world covered in forest, dominated by the now extinct Rapa Nui palm. This forest was the foundation of their civilization. It provided timber for building ocean-going canoes for fishing, wood for fuel, and fiber for rope. For centuries, the Rapa Nui thrived. Their population grew, once estimated to be as high as 15,000 people, though today most researchers place the peak population at a more sustainable 3,000 to 6,000. But as the population grew, so did the demand for resources. Land was cleared for farming, and according to the classic theory of collapse, more and more trees were felled to help transport the ever larger Moai. The very obsession that defined their culture may have become the engine of its destruction. Competing clans, vying for prestige, may have entered a frantic race to build bigger and more numerous statues, placing an unsustainable burden on their island home. They weren't alone in this. The Polynesian rat, which arrived with the first settlers, played a devastating part. As the forest thinned, the rats feasted on palm nuts and seeds, preventing any chance of regrowth. The forest was being consumed from both ends. The consequences were catastrophic. The loss of the forest triggered an ecological crisis. Without trees to anchor the soil, fertile topsoil eroded into the sea. Springs dried up. Garden yields failed. Without large timbers, they could no longer build canoes for deep-sea fishing, cutting them off from a crucial source of protein. The island that had been a paradise was becoming a barren, windswept rock. Society began to crumble. As starvation loomed, the social order broke down. Archaeological evidence points to a period of intense warfare. Hamlets moved to fortified caves. Obsidian spear points, known as mata, litter the island, grim evidence of widespread conflict. The old religion collapsed, replaced by a desperate new one, the Birdman cult, a dangerous annual competition to decide which clan would rule. Oral traditions speak of this dark time of hunger, war, and even cannibalism. The very symbols of their ancestral faith became targets of rage. Across the island, rival clans pulled down the statues of their enemies. And evidence suggests that some of this internal conflict and the toppling of Moai began before the first Europeans ever arrived. This is the story that has echoed for centuries, a chilling tale of ecocide. The statues as a warning, reading the signs. This is where our central question returns. What if the statues weren't just the cause of the collapse, but a reaction to it? What if, as their world unraveled, the Rapa Nui didn't slow down but desperately accelerated their statue production? Imagine the scene. The forests are thinning. The soil is washing away. The old ways are failing. In a desperate act of faith, the clans pour all their remaining energy into their sacred tradition. They carve bigger, more imposing Moai, not out of pride, but out of fear. A frantic plea to the ancestors to restore balance and make the land fertile once more. Each new statue is a prayer in stone. In this light, the unfinished statues in the quarry take on a new, more poignant meaning. They aren't just abandoned projects. They are the final, desperate gasps of a dying culture. The moment the last usable tree fell, or social order finally collapsed, the carving simply stopped. Or maybe there's an even more profound interpretation. Could the Rapa Nui have understood what was happening? In this scenario, the statues become a deliberate message, a record of their folly. They couldn't write down their history, but they could leave behind an undeniable testament to their existence and their failure. A gallery of silent accusers, staring out over a desolate landscape as a warning for any who might follow. This interpretation, championed by scholars like Jared Diamond, is a powerful one. It frames Rapa Nui as the ultimate cautionary tale, a story of what happens when a society overexploits its limited resources. In this view, Easter Island is a miniature Earth. This narrative is compelling, dramatic, and for decades, it has been the accepted story. But history is never so simple. Rewriting the catastrophe, a new perspective. The story of a self-inflicted ecocide is a powerful parable. But what if it's mostly a myth? Increasingly, scientists and archaeologists argue that it's a gross oversimplification. New evidence paints a picture not of foolish self-destruction, but of resilience, adaptation, and a catastrophe that came not from within, but from the outside. For starters, those population numbers. Re-evaluating the island's sophisticated agriculture, like the rock mulching used to enrich the soil, some researchers now believe the island never supported more than 3,000 to 4,000 people, a number consistent with what early European visitors recorded. If that's true, there was no massive population boom and no dramatic collapse before contact. The timeline of the real catastrophe is also being rewritten. While the island certainly faced environmental challenges, new genetic research suggests the Rapa Nui population was relatively stable until the 19th century. The true collapse came after European contact. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders abducted up to a third of the population, including most of the elders who held the culture's history. Survivors who returned brought smallpox and tuberculosis, which ravaged the remaining islanders. Within years, the population plummeted to just over 100 people. The culture wasn't destroyed by its own actions. It was shattered by slavery and disease. This new evidence forces us to see the Rapa Nui not as failures, but as ingenious survivors. They were masters of their environment, who developed sustainable ways to thrive on a challenging island for centuries. The toppled statues, long seen as proof of starvation-fueled civil war, may well have been pushed over during the social chaos that followed the 19th century slave raids and epidemics. This revised history doesn't erase the environmental changes, but it reframes the cause, suggesting the Rapa Nui were not architects of their own doom, but victims. The story of Easter Island is more complex and more human than we ever imagined. It's a story of faith, ingenuity, survival, and a tragic encounter with the outside world. The debate is far from over, with each new discovery adding another layer to the mystery. What do you believe happened on Rapa Nui? Was it a story of self-inflicted collapse, a cautionary tale for our times, or a story of resilience, tragically cut short? Let us know your theory in the comments below. And if you want to explore more of history's greatest enigmas and challenge what you think you know about the past, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell for more investigations into lost civilizations and ancient mysteries. So, could the Easter Island statues have been a warning? The answer, it seems, is both no and yes. There is no evidence the Rapa Nui people intentionally carved these magnificent figures as a warning to the future. They were monuments of faith, guardians of resources, and embodiments of ancestral power, created by a society that was, for most of its history, successful and resilient. And yet, they have become a warning. The history of Rapa Nui, whether of internal struggles or external destruction, has been transformed into one of the most powerful environmental parables of our time. The silent gaze of the Moai no longer looks just over their lost villages, but out at a modern world grappling with its own ecological crossroads. The Rapa Nui may not have intended to leave a message for us, but their story and the haunting presence of their statues on a barren island forces us to ask a critical question. Are we listening?